Pierce Brosnan once captured the world's heart with his elegant portrayal of James Bond in GoldenEye. Yet behind the glamour of cinema, his life has been marked by losses no one ever wishes to endure. I still remember how he held his first wife's hand until her final breath as she lost the battle with ovarian cancer. Years later, fate struck again, taking his daughter at just 41, to the very same illness, leaving behind a wound that could never truly heal. And still, Pierce never gave in to despair. Each time life tested him, he rose again, carrying dignity, strength, and a heart that never stopped loving. Now, at 71, another shadow quietly looms over him, stirring deep concern among those who love him most. It is a moment that once more leaves the public silent, watching closely as he continues down a path marked by resilience and sorrow. Pierce Brosnan was born on May 16, 1953, in Drogheda, Ireland, in a small town where one might expect a childhood of peace and simplicity. Yet for him, those first years began with an emptiness that would shape his life forever. His father, Thomas Brosnan, a carpenter, walked away when Pierce was far too young to hold on to any memory of him. There was no tragic accident, no farewell, no explanation. Just a quiet departure, leaving behind a closed door and a silence that lingered throughout his childhood. Pierce grew up carrying that absence, holding within him a yearning to know a face, a voice, a presence that every child should have. Many years later, when he was already a star beloved around the world, he confessed that he had never seen his father's face and had never heard the sound of his voice. That revelation struck deeply, not only as a truth of his own life but as a reminder of a hidden wound, one that stretched from his earliest days into adulthood. It was a loss that neither fame nor success could ever erase, a void that became part of who Pierce Brosnan is, shaping his strength, resilience, and quiet sensitivity along the way. Pierce Brosnan grew up in a childhood marked by absence and quiet resilience. His mother, May, was a devoted nurse who carried the hope of building a better future for her son. But in 1957, when Pierce was only 4 years old, she made the painful decision to leave Ireland for London in search of work. She promised it would be just for a short while, yet the separation stretched into 7 long years. During that time, Pierce never had a permanent home. Sometimes he lived with his grandparents in Navan, other times with his aunt and uncle. Each household had its own rules, its own voices, and an ever-present feeling that he was only passing through. In the middle of those changes, Pierce learned to stay silent, to observe more than he spoke. He withdrew into himself, slowly building an inner world where he could feel safe. Teachers at school began to notice that there was something different about him. In his gaze, often drifting toward the classroom window, there seemed to be a quiet spark, as if he were searching for something beyond what the world around him could offer. It was the look of a boy yearning for something greater, a mystery he could not yet define, but one that would grow into a fire shaping his journey for the rest of his life. In 1964, when Pierce Brosnan turned 11, a new chapter quietly unfolded in his life. His mother returned after years of separation, and by her side was her new husband, William Carmichael. William was not the type of man who spoke loudly or imposed himself. He carried a calm, patient presence, and he never tried to replace the absent figure of a father Pierce had never known. Instead, he offered lessons that seemed simple yet carried great meaning: how to wait patiently while holding a fishing rod over still waters, how to mend something broken with steady hands, and, more importantly, how to trust another human being. For a boy who had grown up surrounded by absence and separation, even love itself felt fragile, as if holding on too tightly might cause it to slip away again. One day, William took him to a cinema to see the film Goldfinger. On the wide screen, Sean Connery appeared as James Bond, radiating strength, confidence, and an unshakable presence. In that moment, the boy sat transfixed, his eyes shining in the darkness of the theater. Deep inside, Pierce thought to himself, "That is the man I want to become." And in that instant, a small spark of a dream was lit, a flame that would continue to burn within him for years to come. At 16, Pierce Brosnan stepped into an unfamiliar chapter of his life when he left his hometown for London. He carried little with him, only the dream of painting and the belief that colors could somehow reshape his world. He enrolled at St. Martin's School of Art, where the intense works of Francis Bacon and Lucian Freud ignited a deep fascination within him. Yet reality was harsh. While classmates relied on family support, Pierce survived on burnt toast and cheap tea, clinging to the hope that art would one day open a path. One afternoon in 1971, while wandering the streets of London, he stopped at a small theatre. Inside, a performer was practicing fire eating. The scene was strange, even dangerous, but instead of turning away, Pierce asked to try. The flames leapt, and in that reckless instant, a new door opened. Those around him sensed something unique, a presence forged through hardship. The troupe invited him to join, and soon after, he was accepted into the London Drama Centre, a school so demanding that more than half of its students eventually quit. Brosnan endured. By day he studied Shakespeare, by night he trained in mime, circus skills, and took on any odd job he could find to survive. From nothing, he discovered a new passion, and that very flame carried him forward, fueling the dream that would take him farther than he had ever imagined. After years of study and relentless training, Pierce Brosnan finally stepped onto the stage in 1976. His role in Wait Until Dark did not make him a star, nor did it shower him with fame. Yet, in the quiet moments where he lingered in the shadows, with his piercing gaze and silent intensity, audiences could not help but take notice. A year later, fate placed him in the Red Devil Battery Sign, a play once forgotten in America. But in London, Brosnan's delivery gave the story new life, and suddenly the theatre felt alive in a way it hadn't before. By 1980, he took his first steps into cinema. His appearance beside Elizabeth Taylor in The Mirror Cracked lasted only seconds, and the modest pay could barely cover a few meals. Still, for Brosnan, it was not about the money. It was the beginning of something greater. That same year, he appeared in The Long Good Friday. Though his part was small, the film went on to become a classic, planting the first seeds of recognition. Brosnan advanced carefully, one step at a time, with quiet determination. Then in 1982, he auditioned for a minor role in the detective series Remington Steele. To everyone's surprise, instead of a supporting role, he was chosen as the lead. In that single moment, a new door swung open, carrying him from the dim lights of small theaters to the bright stage of a career that was only just beginning. At 29, Pierce Brosnan was still a stranger to American audiences. He didn't fit the image of the typical American leading man, suave, polished, and perfectly packaged. Yet, the moment he auditioned for Remington Steele, something undeniable happened. The role felt as though it had been waiting for him all along. On October 1, 1982, the series made its debut. Within weeks, more than 15 million viewers were tuning in each week, and soon the show was broadcast in over 80 countries. Overnight, Brosnan's name became familiar in countless households around the world. But with fame came its shadow. Critics and fans alike gave him a new title, the next James Bond. It was both an honor and a burden, a label that followed him through every role he took, as though his future had already been written. In 1983, the rumor reached Albert Cubby Broccoli, the legendary producer of the Bond franchise. When Brosnan visited the set of For Your Eyes Only, where his wife Cassandra Harris was acting, Broccoli glanced at him and made a remark heavy with implication: "If he can act, then he's my man." It felt like destiny was opening a door. But fate had other plans. Roger Moore, who had considered stepping away from James Bond, was persuaded to return under a special deal. And just like that, the opportunity that seemed so close to Brosnan slipped away, leaving behind a silence filled with longing and unfinished possibility. In 1986, Pierce Brosnan once again came close to the role that had haunted him for years, James Bond. With Remington Steele officially cancelled, he was finally free. At that very moment, the producers of 007 announced the search for a new Bond. Negotiations began, photos were taken, the image of Brosnan in the tuxedo felt inevitable. The dream was within reach. But fate played its cruel game. Out of nowhere, NBC reversed its decision and revived Remington Steele for another season. Bound by contract, Brosnan could only watch as the role slipped away into the hands of Timothy Dalton. In front of cameras, he smiled, polished and composed as always. Yet inside, it was a bitter disappointment, as if destiny had dangled the prize before him, only to snatch it away at the last moment. Fans later called those years the Lost Bond era. But Brosnan refused to fade. Over the next 8 years, he poured his soul into every project. From the espionage thriller The Fourth Protocol to the haunting role in Nomads, he proved he was more than a man waiting for Bond. And even in something as light as a Diet Coke commercial, striding in a tuxedo with playful charm, audiences couldn't help but see the secret agent's shadow. A shadow that lingered like fate, waiting for the right time to return. In 1994, Pierce Brosnan was no longer the young actor waiting helplessly for luck to come his way. By then, He was a man shaped by hardship, patience, and the bitter taste of lost chances. That was why, when fate finally opened the door, he knew this opportunity was priceless. After years of near misses, James Bond was his at last. To Brosnan, it was not just another role, but a turning point. GoldenEye arrived at a time when the Bond franchise was struggling, its magic fading, and many believed 007 was finished. The pressure was immense. Success meant revival, failure meant the end. Against all doubt, Brosnan delivered. He brought a fresh spark to Bond, suave yet dangerous, elegant yet sharp, and undeniably magnetic. GoldenEye went on to gross more than $350 million worldwide, reviving the legend. What made it extraordinary was that Brosnan didn't just act the part, he lived it. He threw himself into the action, even performing the iconic bungee jump from a 200-meter dam, a stunt so risky that insurance companies refused coverage. From that moment, the world knew a new Bond had been born. 3 more films followed, grossing over $1.2 billion combined, cementing Brosnan's place as one of the most memorable Bonds in history. Tempting offers came his way. Steven Spielberg himself wanted him as Indiana Jones, but Brosnan never wavered. After waiting so long, after dreaming for years, he would never abandon the role that defined both his career and his heart. Behind the flashes of cameras and the glamour of red carpets, Pierce Brosnan's heart truly belonged to Cassandra Harris. Long before the world embraced him as James Bond, there was a woman whose elegance, intelligence, and radiant smile could light up an entire room. Their paths crossed in the late 1970s. At that time, Brosnan was still a struggling young actor, while Cassandra was already established in her career. She was a devoted mother to Charlotte and Christopher from her previous marriage, a woman admired for her beauty, strength, and grace. For many men, stepping into a ready-made family would have been daunting. But not for Brosnan. What drew him in was not only Cassandra's striking presence, but also her warmth, the kind of warmth that makes the world feel less lonely. To her children, he did not arrive as a guest. He arrived as though he had always been there. In 1980, the two married, and 3 years later, they welcomed their son, Sean. In the family photos of that era, Brosnan's smile was not the polished charm of a rising star. It was the contentment of a man who had finally discovered his true home. Years later, he reflected with moving simplicity, "I didn't think of myself as a father. I was just Pierce. And then, I became a father." The happiness Pierce Brosnan once found with Cassandra Harris made the tragedy that followed even more heartbreaking. In 1987, while he was away for work, Cassandra began to feel a constant fatigue, her body aching in ways that didn't fade. At first, they believed it was just exhaustion from travel. But back in London, the devastating truth was revealed: she had advanced ovarian cancer. Brosnan would later say it felt as though the ground had disappeared beneath him. One moment they were living a normal life, the next everything had changed. From then on, their days revolved around hospital corridors, the sterile scent of medicine, and the quiet dread of waiting for test results. For 4 long years, Cassandra endured surgeries and relentless chemotherapy. The illness stripped away her strength, her hair, her energy, but it never touched her dignity. She faced everything with extraordinary courage. She demanded honesty, made her own choices, and carried a serenity that left those around her in awe. Brosnan described himself as her silent companion, always by her side, holding her hand. Yet inside, he was breaking. In the stillness of night, Cassandra would whisper to him, not about pain, but about love, life, and the strange peace that comes from no longer denying the truth. Near the end, she held his hand and said, "My love, don't be afraid. This is just a life coming to a close. I want you to remember me as a woman who truly lived, not as a patient." It was her last gift, and her final strength. On December 28, 1991, just one day after their 11th wedding anniversary, Cassandra passed away at the age of 43. Brosnan was at her side, with Christopher nearby. Charlotte managed to say her goodbye over the phone, and little Sean, only 8, was in the house but too young to grasp the weight of the silence. Christmas had ended, but the home was filled with emptiness. In the days that followed, Brosnan moved through life like a shadow. He had to arrange the funeral, comfort the family, and somehow keep 3 children standing. He chose not to cry in front of them, to be their pillar, even when grief threatened to drown him. At night, he would walk the quiet hallways, pausing by each child's door just to hear their steady breathing, a reminder that he still had a reason to go on. Yet the pain never faded. It etched itself into his memory, into the laughter he could no longer hear, into milestones Cassandra would never witness. Even at the height of fame, dressed in perfect suits with a dazzling smile, the world only saw a shining star. But behind that light, there remained a man carrying a sorrow no one else could truly see. Pierce Brosnan felt the weight of fear return with the first subtle signs in Charlotte, his beloved daughter. At just 40, she was radiant, warm, and strong, yet deep inside, an unseen shadow silently spread through her body. A hint of fatigue, a vague pain, seemingly minor, but to Pierce, the silence carried the storm of old memories. When test results confirmed the disease had returned, it wasn't shock that crushed him, but a suffocating despair, as if thrown back into the days Charlotte had lost her mother. Over the next 3 years, Charlotte endured the harshest trials, grueling surgeries, exhausting chemotherapy, and long hours in hospital waiting rooms where the smell of antiseptic mingled with quiet determination. Each treatment drained her strength, but her inner fire never dimmed. By her side, Isabella, 15, and Lucas, 8, watched their mother fight each day, a vivid reminder of courage and the power of family. History seemed to repeat itself cruelly, yet in every moment, Pierce saw the light remain, in every held hand, every smile, every second Charlotte kept fighting. Despite pain and danger, love and strength flowed through this family, connecting mother to daughter, memory to present, keeping them steady amid the storm of fate. Charlotte refused to be pitied. The only thing she wished for was time to show her children that love can surpass pain, that even in darkness, a light can endure. In June 2013, as her cancer surged relentlessly, she made a choice few could imagine. Weak and frail, she donned a white dress, stood tall beside Alex, the man who had been her steadfast companion, and exchanged vows in a simple yet powerful ceremony. It was more than a wedding, it was a final declaration, a testament that love could still speak, loud and true. Amid the pain, Charlotte smiled. Her hands trembled, yet her eyes shone with joy and quiet understanding of what lay ahead. Just 2 weeks later, on the peaceful Friday morning of June 28, 2013, Charlotte passed away. London was calm, but in Pierce's heart, that moment carved an indelible mark, a silent wound that no passage of time could ever heal. In 2014, during a Stand Up to Cancer fundraiser, the spotlight fell directly on Pierce Brosnan. It didn't make him shine, it stripped him bare, revealing the scars etched deep within his soul. His voice was steady, low, each word heavy with decades of loss. I held the strong, generous, beautiful hand of my wife, Cassie, as ovarian cancer took her too soon. And just a year ago, I held the hand of my daughter Charlotte, wonderful and beloved, before the cruel hereditary disease took her too. The room fell silent, every heartbeat echoing in the stillness. That pain could not be hidden, it multiplied, spreading through every breath, seeping into every moment. For Pierce, it was no longer a symbol, it had become part of his very flesh, rooted like bone. He once thought Charlotte's passing would be the final blow. Losing both his wife and daughter to the same disease left him facing an abyss, utterly empty. The cruel symmetry of those deaths, years apart yet bound by the same cause, made the emptiness tangible, like the ground beneath him collapsing. Pierce had experienced both, loss as if stolen, and loss as if the earth had given way, embedding itself into every fiber of his being, an inseparable part of his life. The years of unbearable sorrow in Pierce Brosnan's life seemed to ease when Keely Smith entered his world in 1994, during a beach party in Cabo San Lucas. By then, Pierce had become the iconic James Bond on screen, but that fame meant nothing compared to the sense of peace Keely brought. She didn't see the symbol, she didn't try to erase the scars in his heart. Instead, she simply stayed. She stayed through sleepless nights and painful anniversaries that felt like wounds reopening. 2 decades later, when Charlotte fell ill, Keely became a steadfast wall, supporting him quietly, holding the home together, allowing him to live with the grief without needing to speak it aloud. In 2001, they married in an 800-year-old monastery, surrounded by family and friends. For Pierce, it was more than a wedding, it was a declaration that love still endured. A new chapter began as he became a father again with the birth of Dylan and Paris, not to replace the past, but to continue it, embracing fatherhood fully in this new life. Keely's love was quiet yet profound, present in every carefully celebrated birthday, in laughter that lingered even on difficult days, and in teaching him to live with loss rather than hide from it. The world was often harsh, especially after their children were born, with tabloids scrutinizing Keely's appearance. Yet Pierce stood firm, publicly defending her with words full of devotion. I love every curve of her body. In my eyes, she is the most beautiful woman. That unwavering loyalty and love created a solid foundation for a new home, where old sorrows could no longer dominate. Pierce Brosnan had once believed that after all the losses, after the deep scars in his heart, there was nothing more to learn about resilience. Then Keely came into his life, not to erase the gaps, but to teach him how to live with them. She didn't offer forgetfulness, but meaning in the present. Through her, Pierce realized that his most significant role wasn't on the screen, but as a husband, a father, a survivor. Even when he spoke of Cassandra or Charlotte, his eyes drifted, his voice heavy, carrying an emptiness that time could not fill. Loss remained, but with Keely, he found a place to lay down the burden, a gentle harbor after years of free fall. She never tried to fill the voids left behind, she taught him to coexist with them, to find joy even if fragile. She walked through every high and low alongside him, quietly weaving a miracle into Pierce's life. He had weathered storms few men could imagine, witnessing his wife and daughter fight and pass, standing up again and again from the depths of grief. Yet the silent betrayal from Hollywood was something no one could prepare for. After 4 Bond films, after GoldenEye had revived the franchise, after risking himself in dangerous stunts, Pierce believed his place was secure. Then in 2004, while filming in the Bahamas, a 47-second phone call from the producers ended it all. "You were a wonderful James Bond. Thank you very much. Goodbye." His career chapter closed in silence. The cruelest part wasn't losing the role, but the truth. For 2 years, they secretly sought his replacement, making him believe the future remained. The fallout was swift. 3 major contracts vanished overnight, his value collapsed, pay dropped from $12 million to $3, and the Bond image became a prison, locking every door. He had to lay off 12 loyal staff members. The man who had once stood tall through personal tragedies now sank into a different sorrow, the pain of being erased. This was no headline story. Every morning, Pierce woke to a world turned away. For someone whose identity was tied to survival, this loss struck at the root. His son later recalled seeing him cry when Casino Royale premiered, not out of envy or anger, but from profound pain, watching a life he had built continue in others' hands, while he was left out. Years later, Pierce still calls that the darkest period of his life, not just because Bond ended, but because along with it, he lost his sense of purpose, the only anchor amid the tragedies that had once overwhelmed him. Pierce Brosnan's life stands as a testament to the resilience of the human spirit in the face of seemingly unbearable loss. From the heartbreak of losing his first wife and beloved daughter to career shocks that threatened his identity, he faced moments where darkness seemed to swallow every bit of hope. Yet through it all, he found light, in Keely's love, in the joy of family, and in meaning within the simplest of everyday moments. Pierce's story reminds us that pain never truly disappears, but the way we confront it, the way we love, and the way we keep moving forward defines the real strength of a person. His journey is not only the story of a movie star but a lesson in courage, resilience, and finding hope again, showing that no matter how fierce the storm, there is always a safe harbor to return to and continue walking forward.